Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. And today I want to do something a little bit different, and we're going to paint some 6mm scale figures. This is a technique which works best if you're doing large bodies of troops, particularly for large scale armies, so things like Epic, funnily enough, and I'll link to a couple of sites where you can find miniatures like this, as well as some of the rules that you can use to still be playing Epic in this year 2020. So quick shout out to Vanguard Miniatures, where these came from. This isn't paid promotion, I just really like what they're doing. So I do want to make sure that you guys can cruise on out there and see what they're up to, see if there's a producer out there that you might not have noticed before. I'll list all of the paints in the description below, so without any further mucking around, let's get started. Now in order to make it easier to paint these guys, what I've actually done is glued them to this popsicle stick. Just a thin line of PVA glue, so when we're finished it'll be easy to just pop them off and glue them down to their base. I've started from a primer of leather brown, and what I'm going to do now is actually shade over the whole miniature, and it's going to give us sort of a pre-shade effect. Ordinarily when we're painting we'd look at, say, a blue jacket. We'd start with a dark blue and then put lighter colours over the top. But with these 6mm figures, we haven't got a lot of room to kind of maneuver as far as painting goes. So what we're going to do is use this pre-shade to act as the shade for kind of most of what we're painting. You'll see what I mean in a second here. You see these guys are so small, my camera can't even keep both ends of the line in focus at the same time. I've got here, this is Strong Tone, and I'm going to apply this straight from the pot. We'll start from the end here and just go over all of the models. Now I've seen some folks do this from grey and use a black ink, but personally, because I want these guys to be a little bit warmer, I'm going to use brown and Strong Tone, which is sort of a dark brown. But once I've applied this, we'll give this about 10-20 minutes to dry, and we'll come back and see what all of these guys look like once that's done. Now after that's had some time to dry, you'll see what I mean about being able to see the detail a little bit better, and we have got that nice deep shading, which is going to work for how we're going to paint these guys. I've got here now some army green, and I'm going to use this for their jackets. Just going to use my character brush. You don't need to go all the way down to itty bitty tiny brushes. What we're going to do is just paint in the majority of these jackets, but then what I'll do is I'll pick this fella on the end here, and we'll paint a little front foldy bit. And then in areas where you'll spot, that dark, can you see that? There we go. That dark brown, I'm just going to leave that in the recesses as our shading and paint around it. So at the back here, let's just fill all of that in. I'll come back once I've done a lot of them, and I think you'll see what I mean a little easier. Now I can hear a few of you have just gone, oh, as you've gotten on to what I've got going on here. Now, as you can see, I've left some of that brown shading really sort of find the edges of those details, but mostly this was just flicking green on and trying not to get it into the recesses. That's it. What we'll do next though is move on to sort of their leather and cloth areas, and for this I'm going to use this Monster Brown. What I'm going to do is probably do some of this off of camera, but if we turn them around so we can see their packs, let's just quickly blot those in, just across the top of the pack, leave the gap underneath. We don't need to be fancy with this. So this fella on the back here, if we can get the conga line to focus properly, just across there like that, and then he's got the smaller pack underneath. That's our detail done. And then we'll use Angel Green, and we're just going to dot in their helmets and their shoulder pads. Now this will be quite dark in comparison, but that's going to help sell the look. What we want is lots of contrast. And then we'll get a little bit of black, and we'll start blacking in their weapons. So this doesn't take terribly long. With these, I think you don't want to leave, you don't need to worry about leaving that brown in the recess. Just go ahead and black the whole thing in. You could also blacken their boots at the same stage, but I don't think you need to. Now with the weapons blanked in, I think they start to come together. You get a much better look at what they're going to look like on the table. But I still think there's not quite enough visual contrast on the model. They could be brighter so that they're easier to see. So I've got Banshee Brown. What we're going to do is just go over all of those little cloth areas again. So gloves and packs. Let's just go ahead and make those a bit brighter. And now with some gunmetal, let's just pick out a few tiny details on these weapons. It's worth pointing out with these, you're not really painting them to look perfect. This is all about target acquisition. So you and your opponent can both see from across the table what that 6mm tall dude is armed with. And then if you're feeling fancy, and why not, you can add a little bit of dark tone, just drop that on the end of those weapons. Same as with the strong tone earlier, this will just help pick out some of the detail. Now I've given these guys a quick spray of varnish. You could brush it on if that's what you wanted to do, but honestly a quick spray is not going to hurt them any. Now let's see if we can get these guys off the popsicle stick. I'll admit I'm a little nervous. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, I might have glued these guys down a little much. A knife will solve my problems. There we go. Yes. Let's... Oops. Oh, well, they're varnished. Now, when it comes to basing, you could grab yourself some MDF bases. They're pretty easy to find online, and base up a whole squad like this. But Epic tended to have, smaller 5-man teams, and so I've got some little 3D printed bases here. Again, something you can probably very easily find an alternative for online, particularly if you are going through these Vanguard miniatures. Then after a little bit of sand and some snow flock, that's all we've got. And honestly, I'm pretty pleased with those. Now obviously they're not actually stuck to this grey thing, it just makes them a little easier to to hold while I'm showing them off. But I'm actually quite happy with how they turned out. As you can see, it's not a terribly, it's not tidy, but it is effective. Make sure I've got them in shot there. What we're looking for is something that can be recognized from across the table. And I think that's not a bad look. What I could do from here would be to go ahead and highlight them with something else. Maybe even go ahead and, add a shade or something. But if I'm painting, my goodness, 80 or 100 of these guys for a game, I'm not going to bother. You just want to get them on the table. And I think this is one method that really works. Now, just to quickly demonstrate, this method also works on slightly larger figures. These are 10mm guys from Pendraken. These are their World War II British fellas. See a little Piet hiding under the bush there? And these are done using much the same method. I have come back and given these guys a slight highlight so that their sleeves and some of their trousers stand out a little bit more. But for the most part, it's just colors over the top of the brown with that shade. Winner, very, very quick, very effective for these sorts of scales. So there you have it. Something a little unusual, but something that has come up in questions a few times now. As always, thank you very much to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all the patrons who've helped make this video possible, including producers Jonathan Harris, Ella Nuttall, and Ben Hicks. Any questions, feel free to drop in the old comment box below. My Twitter and Facebook are both linked there too. So, thank you very much for your time, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.